Oh, the lighting here is so low. Lighting is so low. Hi everyone, welcome back to Karen Vibes. How you all doing? Hope you all doing okay and having an awesome Sunday evening. Forgive me guys, the lighting in this room is rather dull. I need to probably change the bulbs. But anyhow, we have to just make do. Hi everyone, how you all doing? Guys, I have been so busy. You guys must be tired of hearing me say that. I've been so busy. These last 2 weeks have been very hectic for me. Been very hectic. So I've been super busy working on some projects. That's been keeping me busy as a bee. But anyhow, we are here. So welcome back. Today we're going to continue reading our book, which will soon be finished. I know it took a long time to read this one, but oh well. So we're going to continue reading our book. The name of it is Minty Alley, written by C.L.R. James and narrated by me, Karen. Alright, so we're just going to get right into the meat of the matter. If you're just joining me, you can follow my page on YouTube. It's Karen Vibes, so that's KarenVibes with an exclamation sign. So you can follow me on YouTube if you want to follow my reading, and you can see where I've left off, and you can follow the story through. Alright, and for those who are usually here listening and viewing, welcome. Alright, so we had stopped at ending of chapter 22, and now we're at chapter 23. I hope I am not mistaken. Yes, so we're at chapter 23. So let's just get right into it. So grab your drink, grab your cup of tea, and hope that tea is you know, I need to, but when I come back on the next time, I need to showcase some more of my teas. So hopefully that tea that you'll be drinking is cave spicy teas. So whether it's the fever grass or the pimento or the bay leaf or the soursop, do enjoy. You know, you can also have it cold as well. Iced tea. Alright, so grab your tea, grab your drink, sit back and relax. So if you're doing something, just listen along. Alright, so without further ado, so chapter 23. It was about this time that Ben started to show himself around number 2, walking up and down, standing at the corner, even talking to Maisie on the sidewalk. Contrary to the general expectation, Mrs. Rose never stirred an inch to see him, though some of the family peeped through the front window. Mrs. Rose had never met him and said she didn't want to. She said she had been living in sin. God had punished her and had shown her the way out, and she prayed to him for courage and strength to live a decent life. Once, however, when Maisie raised a wolf cry of the nurse is coming, Mrs. Rose left a slipper behind in her dash to catch a glimpse. She said she wanted to see how the prostitute was faring as a married woman. Although the town was small, neither Haynes nor Mrs. Rose had ever seen the nurse since the day she had left number 2. Maisie had stolen away once or twice to see her. Phyllis had met her and they talked. Miss Atwell saw her and passed her as if it was she and not Mrs. Rose who had been deprived of Ben. But Mrs. Rose and Haynes, who most wanted to see her, never saw her. When they did see her, they saw her together the day she was sentenced. Oh my goodness, sentence. Let us hear about what this sentence is about, guys. About 4 o'clock one afternoon, Haynes was driving in the tram car on the firm's business when he caught a fleeting glimpse of the tail end of a crowd above which towered a policeman's helmet. Many heads turned and there was a buzz of conversation in the tram. At the next stop, someone came into the tram and, as is the habit in the West Indies, started to tell the conductor all about it. The crowd was following a nurse, a thin little white woman, married the other day to a black fellow, Ben. Some report had been made to the police station about her. So this is the man on the tram car now telling the conductor what he saw, describing the nurse and what he saw. All right, let's read back from here. The crowd was following a nurse, a thin little white woman, married the other day to a black fellow, Ben. Some report had been made to the police station about her stealing things. A policeman had arrested her and was taking her to the station. Just a sec, guys. I think that my light on my phone is low. Yeah, that's a bit better. Yeah, because the lighting was rather low. I had to just turn it up. Alright, let's continue. Sorry about that. The news had created a sensation in the town, for many people knew the nurse, especially since the romantic marriage. Haynes hurried through what he had to do and sped home as fast as he could in order to be able to give the news to Mrs. Rose. Had she succumbed to temptation and informed the police? He did not think so, but he wanted to know and to hear what she would say when she heard. But with all his haste, Phyllis forestalled him. He was just in time for the tail end of her account. Maisie, Miss Atwell, Archer, and 1 or 2 other neighbors formed a group in the yard while Phyllis told what she had seen. As soon as Haynes appeared, she stopped. Mr. Haynes, said Maisie. You heard, Mr. Haynes? Said Mrs. Rose. If you were in town, you heard. Yes, Haynes replied, but don't let me interrupt Phyllis. Go on, Phyllis. You said you saw her coming down with the parcels and... Oh, yes, Mr. Haynes. She had a big basket of clothes on her hand, like when you're carrying a baby, and 2 police, 1 on each side, and the inspector behind, and 1 crowd of people. But she wasn't crying or nothing, you know. She had on the uniform and the glasses and her head held straight up. And so she passed into the station. I was going close, but they had too much people, so I make my round as fast as I could and come back up to tell Mrs. Rose. I just reached. If it was me, I would have died, said Miss Atwell. I know I wouldn't have carried any basket, said Maisie. To go down, I would have had to go down, but they couldn't force me to carry any basket. If they wanted any basket, they would have carried it themselves. Mrs. Rose looked at her, but decided to say nothing. She spoke to Haynes. You see what I was telling you that day was no lie? You see what I was telling you, Mr. Haynes? God let it work round so. That is my revenge. Her lips were a piece of wire and her eyes shone like steel. God is great, Mr. Haynes. Look what she come to. Down Main Street like the common thief that she is, carrying all that she thief before her. And Mr. Ben, where he going to hide his head? Mr. Haynes? Where he going to put it? But let him look out for himself too, Mr. Haynes. See if they don't work him into it. She is his wife. He have to stand responsible for her. He cannot shirk his duty now. He went in the church with her, for better or worse. And Mr. Haynes, he used to wear these things. People used to see him. You watch and see whether they don't bring him in with her before the case finish. You watch and see. She paused for lack of breath. But if you did see her going down, said Phyllis, all the barristers and solicitors and clerks in Court Street coming out to watch her going down with this big parcel. And the police and the people. God, if it was me, I would have died. Poor thing, said Maisie. There was scarcely an occasion Haynes could remember in which Maisie either through inadvertence or malice, or both, did not, with infallible instinct, say or do the thing most calculated to ignite Mrs. Rose. Poor thing. It would take a dog like you to say poor thing. Yes, you and she is the same breed. That's why you say poor thing. You didn't say poor thing when you was helping she and the man to stab me in my back, said Mrs. Rose. All the persecutions the woman persecute me, you didn't say poor thing to me. When I was working here day and night to get food to give you, you don't say poor thing. But when God gives this one what she deserve, you come talk about poor thing. Look here, girl, move. Mrs. Rose was already in a frightful passion and advanced a step towards Maisie. Move before I strike you down. Miss Atwell rushed dramatically in between them. Miss Atwell, though sincerely deploring the quarrels, enjoyed the part of peacemaker, especially when it came to rushing in to save Mrs. Rose from trouble. You have some people like that, love their attention. Anyway, Maisie walked off quietly. Strike me down, eh? You think it's so people does get strike down? Try it, me say. And see if both of us don't sleep in jail with the nurse tonight. Try it. Don't bother with her, Mrs. Rose, said Miss Atwell. Don't mind. Words don't break bones. It's all right. No bother with her. And Mrs. Rose, who had shown signs of following Maisie, sat down on the bench. Mr. Haynes, God is too good. Pray to him and he will never desert you. Mr. Haynes, today is Thursday. Saturday gone, I get a letter. Look, if you knew my distress when I read it. From whom? From that woman. From that woman, who else? Show Mr. Haynes the letter, said Miss Atwell. No, I can't show Mr. Haynes that, said Mrs. Rose. But why not? Said Miss Atwell. Mr. Haynes is a big man. He ain't no little boy. Show Mr. Haynes the letter, insisted Miss Atwell, who had no hesitations nor care whatsoever with anyone. And once, when Haynes noticed that she was at home for a few days, and unsuspectingly inquired what was going on, what was wrong, embarrassed him horribly by telling him that, of course, she need not tell him what it was that kept her, but she hoped before long that the change of life, Mr. Haynes would rid her of her difficulties. Mrs. Rose took from her pocket and handed him a cheap envelope addressed to Mrs. A. Rose, 2 Minty Alley. Inside was a piece of foolscap paper on which Haynes read as follows. You son of a bitch. You not ashamed? You dog. You bitch. You son of a bitch. You still encouraging the man. You think you're going to take him away? But he leave you. Why don't you leave him alone? He had your latitude for 18 years and he leave you because he don't want you anymore. You have no shame. You won't get him away no matter how you try. What an old bitch like you want with a man. Why don't you take Archer or Mr. Haynes? You dog. Whoa, what a letter. What a letter the nurse write to Miss Rose. Mrs. Rose, my God. Haynes handed it back without a word. Mr. Haynes, she and the man been quarreling since a week after they married. I hear last week he leave her for good. She hear he's coming around here, so she must think he coming back to me. But I don't want him, Mr. Haynes. I trying to make my peace with God. And then for that woman to write this nasty letter. But I shouldn't have let such a childish letter worry me, Mr. Haynes. Same thing, I tells her, said Miss Atwell. Oh, Mr. Haynes, you're not a woman. Look at the things that this woman write in the letter. If you know how I feel when I get it. But Mr. Haynes, God not sleeping. God not sleeping. She stood up and she raised her right hand in the air with the forefinger pointing upwards. No, Mr. Haynes, he not sleeping. He not sleeping. God not sleeping. I get the letter on Saturday. Sunday morning I went to church. I say, God, the protector of the widow and the fatherless, you know I have nobody else but you. Look down on me with the eyes of pity and give me my revenge on the one who have done me this injustice. Mr. Haynes, that was Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 3 days. And look where she is. And let that Mr. Ben look to himself. His turn coming next. Let him look to himself. The nurse got bail and her case was called and adjourned. Again, number 2 was in a fever. The general expectation was that she would get 3 months at least. But Haynes heard in town that she would probably be heavily fined. The charge was a serious one, but it was whispered that many of the people she had attended did not wish her to go to jail, and strong influence would be brought to bear on her behalf. On the day of the case, however, Haynes was in court. He had carefully arranged days before to be away from the shop that morning. Mrs. Rose had got up at 3 o'clock to make the cakes, and she and Miss Atwell, who had sent an excuse of illness to her shirt factory, had gone long before him. Maisie too was there. Phyllis hoped to get a chance to look in sometime. Archer at number 2 was left at number 2 in charge of the home. Archer went to the house of justice too, often on business or to go there for pleasure. When Haynes went into the courthouse that morning, the place was crowded. He saw Miss Atwell and Phyllis in the front row of spectators and wondered where Mrs. Rose was. Maisie he did not see at once, but soon discovered her in an animated conversation with a young solicitor's clerk. At 5 minutes to 9, court began. At 9, those who were to be tried walked upstairs from the marshal's room, a constable in front and one behind. Today, the nurse, whose case came first, headed the procession. She came up the steps, thin as a string, oh my God, and flat as a board. Miss Atwell, and very pale. Miss Atwell whispered, saying that the nurse was very pale. But she carried herself erect, and Haynes could not help admiring the courage with which she was at least beginning the day. She saw him and gave him a slight smile, an inclination of the head. Haynes had just replied when Mrs. Rose, who had concealed herself in an alcove in the passage, suddenly jumped out. There was a little space between the policeman in front and the nurse. Mrs. Rose moved quickly into it and barred the way of the nurse, who fell back and threw the line into disorder. Mrs. Rose had an umbrella in her hand, but contrary to the expectation of those who were looking on, she did not attempt, nor had she ever had in mind, any assault on the nurse. Blocking the nurse's way, she struck the umbrella 2 or 3 times on the concrete floor, and throwing her head back, she said, "Man, I hear this now." So you see, hold on guys. Blocking the nurse's way, she struck the umbrella 2 or 3 times on the concrete floor, and throwing her head back, she said, "Doggy, doggy, look bone." So if you all remember the story, if you've been following the story, you would have remembered that the nurse always used this little phrase when she beating her son. At the time when she did cuss her Miss Rose, she always talk about doggy, doggy, look bone. So you see, our life is very funny. They always say what goes around comes around. So Miss Rose just used back this phrase on her. Anyway, let's read on. "Doggy, doggy, look bone," said Mrs. Rose to the nurse. Luckily, she had no more to say. The 2 policemen threw her roughly out of the way, but she did not mind. She had done what she had planned to do. She went to Phyllis, who had been holding her seat for her, and put on her glasses to follow the case. So Mrs. Rose must get a little revenge. The nurse was fined £15 or 3 months. Mrs. Rose, who had confidently expected and freely predicted that she could not escape jail, was disappointed. But not too much so. Her triumph of the morning filled her heart. So at least she get a little revenge. She accosted the nurse and said, "Doggy, doggy, look bone." All the afternoon at number 2, they discussed the case, saying over and over again to one another what each had seen. "You remember when he asked her this or that? And you remember how she looked at Ben when he..." "Mrs. Rose, all you notice when they asked him about the links, how he looked at me before he answered?" After supper, Mrs. Rose, Miss Atwell, and Phyllis came to Haynes' door. "We are going for a little walk on the seawall," said Mrs. Rose. "We're going for a little walk on the seawall, said Mrs. Rose. To talk over things. To talk over things." "To talk over things," said Haynes. "Yes, Mr. Haynes," said Mrs. Rose. I feel happy. I know that God have not deserted me. And this is you. Vindication before the public," said Miss Atwell. Phyllis laughed gaily. "Isn't Maisie going too?" said Haynes. "No, I'm tired. I don't feel to go for any walk tonight," said Maisie. "I'm going to bed early." Something in her voice and in the way she stretched herself as she spoke touched chords in Haynes. He realized that his moment had come. And we all know what that moment is because he has been lusting after Maisie. So we can all figure out what that moment will be. But in the next chapter 24, we will read what that moment is. So folks, thank you for listening. Thank you for joining me this evening. And I want to wish you all a productive Monday week ahead. May all your dreams and your plans come true. And if it doesn't come true, there's always a next time. Alright, so thank you. Please remember to like, subscribe to my channel, Karen Vibes, KarenVibes with an exclamation sign on YouTube. And join my reading that I've done before. I'm actually trying to get at least 50 subscribers in order to go live on YouTube. I haven't reached that yet. So if you come across my page, please like, subscribe. Right? And leave a comment when you can. Let me know what you think about my reading, what you think about the story. Alright guys, so that's the end of chapter 23. When we come back on again very soon. I'm not going to wait so long. I don't like when I stretch out the reading so long. But sometimes I get super busy. But we'll be back on soon in short order to read chapter 24. Yeah, and our book is going down. We'll soon be finished. So, alright guys, so take care of yourselves and be good. Bye.